you brought up the Pittsburgh Steelers, and maybe they should have just stuck with Justin Fields.
Yep.
That he could have led them to the 10-6 record that they have right now. You also would have got a better view on how Justin Fields is for your future.
Yeah.
And the long-term possibility of him as a starting quarterback. I think they made the right move in going back to Russell Wilson. I think it made them a better team. And the reason that I feel that way is the reason for this next segment, Kerry Rhodes.
Uh-oh.
It's not that I believed in Russell Wilson as much as I did. Because, again, as a Seahawks fan, I saw some of Russell Wilson's warts. And he was great for the franchise, the greatest quarterback they've ever had with that team. There's no doubt about it. But in his last year, suffered a finger injury. There were other kind of warning signs. And then we saw what happened with Russell Wilson in Denver, and it wasn't working out. So I don't think Russell Wilson was the end-all, fix-all for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
But in the middle of the season, they had me convinced. They really did. It was this reclamation project. It's not only is it Russell Wilson, it's Justin Fields comes in, your guy that you felt should have been the starter, and they've carved out a role for him, so they've figured out a way to make it work with two guys. Arthur Smith comes in as the offensive coordinator and kind of takes the stink off of his tenure with the Atlanta Falcons, and you're look at what Arthur Smith has been doing with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and with Najee Harris, with Jaylen Warren, George Pickens. And then you had that defense, and that defense led by T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward. I thought the Steelers were legit. I thought that they were a defensive football team that had enough on offense where they could make plays and be dangerous. And I'm always looking at what teams can go to Kansas City, what teams can go to Buffalo, what team could go to Baltimore and win a football game if need be, because those are your prime competitions, your prime competitors in the AFC.
Yeah.
And I have questions about Buffalo's defense.
Yep.
I still do. I have questions about Baltimore's defense. I don't have any questions about the Chiefs. But right up there with the Chiefs was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I believed in the Pittsburgh Steelers in the middle of the season. I believed that they could go to Buffalo if they won the AFC North and knock off the Bills and go to the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And now they're going to limp into the playoffs as a wild card, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to get anything done in this postseason window. So even though they qualified for the postseason, I expected more from them. I expected them to make a run and be a factor, and they have not lived up to the expectation that I did not have preseason. It was only during the season, but they had me convinced enough. It's like the Falcons a few years ago I could never put my finger on, and in fact, I can't even put my finger on the Minnesota Vikings this year. Right when I think they're great and unstoppable, they lose a couple of games, so I jump off and say, nah, it's not going to happen. Then they go and win, then they pull out this win against Arizona, and then they beat my Seahawks. And I've never gotten a feel for Minnesota despite them being 13-2 this year. But Pittsburgh fooled me. I thought Pittsburgh had the defense, and they had enough on offense. And this late season, I don't want to call it a collapse, but it sure hasn't been good. This 3-game losing streak has made the Pittsburgh Steelers fool me.
Thank you for not saying a collapse, Dan.
Yeah,
because I think that's the normal word that people would say when you start off where you are and then you fall to where you are now. This team overachieved all year, so to say a collapse is kind of harsh. But to kind of piggyback on what you're saying right now, the joke, these hard jokes and these hard lessons come to a lot of us during the season. We go through peaks and valleys with teams and with players. We have players playing stretches where you're like, oh, this guy's the MVP, or this guy's the next Joe Montana, or whatever the thing is.
Week to week, yeah.
And then you 2-3 weeks later, he's the worst player in the league. So I think with any situation when it comes to a long season like the NFL is, being able to temper the climate, the temperature in the room, and be the adult in the room is always a smart thing, because these teams are ever evolving and things are going to change. Players are going to get hurt. Other guys are going to get better. And so when it comes to these teams, man, it's always hard to pick them. And we live in a business where we have to make predictions. We have to make claims and takes. It's always going to be one of these situations. So Pittsburgh's your team, huh?
There was a point, again, that I thought, I don't want to face them.
Yeah.
If I'm the Chiefs, I wouldn't want to see Pittsburgh on the other sideline. And then we saw what happens when Kansas City and Pittsburgh plays on Christmas Day, without Chris Jones, by the way.
I know one team that wouldn't want to face them. That would be one of the top seeds, and that probably would be the only team would be Baltimore. because they're in the division.
Yeah.
They play each other twice a year, and it's always scary, right?
Yeah, it's always that with Steelers and Ravens. I'm not saying that Kerry never admits that he's wrong. That's not what I'm saying.
what
I'm saying is that Kerry just holds out that his point or his take could still be true, because we had this Russell Wilson, Justin Fields argument during our Red Zone show, and I felt like I won because Russell Wilson did take over, and then they had success. Yes. And so I just thought this was a done deal. And then he ends up coming up today and saying, like, see, they should have stuck with Justin Fields, trying to hold on to his point that he made in week 2 of this NFL season. But if I were to say that maybe you were wrong or a team disappointed you, or in the word that I used, fooled.
Yeah.
Is there an NFL team that fooled you this year, at least at some point during the season or entering the season, that just either you thought were going to stink and they were great, or the opposite, where maybe they aren't as good as you would have hoped they would
the
have
obvious for me is the Jets, right? And I know
yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there.
Aboard.
I didn't want to go there, but yeah, obviously. I mean, you come into a year where you supposedly have 20 all-pros. I mean, coming into the season, let people talk about it, right? Like, you have the names. You have the flash. You're in New York. You have a quarterback coming back off of injury that's going to make this team better because they already have the other pieces in play. And we look at this and we talk about Chicago, right? They have everything in play. We have all these players. You have the positions filled. Cool. But when you don't have a GM and a head coach that's on the same page, and in this case – you can even take it to another extension, and you talk about the actual owner of this team.
Yeah.
To think that, there's reports coming out about him not wanting to take Jerry Jeudy because his Madden rating. Like, when those things come out, it's a little absurd. So this would be the most disappointing team in the league by far, off of their talent alone. And I don't see a solution to this problem coming anytime soon unless Woody steps away from that team, and so that's kind of where I am. So the biggest disappointment for Kerry Rhodes is the New York Jets.
The Jets fooled you, Jason Stewart.
Yes. See, now, Kerry took my thing, so give me some time to think of mine. Now, the reason why I think that they're the biggest disappointment is because Dan and I, before the season, we read the Aaron Rodgers book, or listened to. Listened to the Aaron Rodgers book by, what's his face? What's the name of the author there?
Ian O'Connor.
Yeah. And, like, by the end of the book, I was just so, like, pulling for him to win it all this year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of the comeback of coming back from the injury. That's a big deal. But you just get the sense that he wants that ultimate, like, F-U to everybody who's been down on him since the COVID comment.
For sure. Yeah.
Almost like it would be like this social comeback. Like, And not that people would embrace him. I think a lot of people root against him still.
Yeah.
But me being kind of the naysayer and also a fan of Aaron Rodgers, I was really hoping for him personally to win it all this season. And the Jets are a mess for a lot of reasons, and I think you could say the play of Aaron Rodgers is one of them. That's the problem. Like, I don't think any of us saw that coming, right?
Right.
I think that there were questions on how you would respond from an Achilles injury at 40 years old, turning 41 like he did earlier this month.
For sure.
I think that those things were legit. There was no guarantee, because there was no guarantee that Kirk Cousins would be able to come back from that sort of injury. So I believed in the Jets enough to pick them to win the division.
You did.
I will say that. So I'm not trying to be all high and mighty, but there were questions. I felt that their defense was good enough that when you have Breece Hall, and at the beginning of the year we didn't know that they would have Devontae Adams.
Right.
And honestly, that really wasn't even much of a conversation. Like, the Devontae Adams stuff transpired within the season. But I thought they would have enough, and we thought that Buffalo was maybe going to take a step back.
That's right.
Without Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and who the weapons were going to be in Buffalo. So I thought it was there for the Jets for the taking, where Aaron Rodgers just had to be 80% of Aaron Rodgers and that he would be good enough. But that wasn't the case. It felt like he's about 50% Aaron Rodgers from what you're saying, Jason Stewart.
And, the other part about that is, and then you see now, he is pretty healthy, right? The last five games or so.
He's hurt now.
He's hurt now, but yes. But before this injury last game, he was on a streak of 8 touchdowns and no interceptions, and looking like he was fine again. Too late, too little, too late, obviously. But it's almost that point of it. You dangle the carrot in front of the fans and us and the people that are still enamored with Aaron Rodgers, and you say, "Oh, see, he still can do it if he's healthy." And that's the other thing now. It's like, do you really want to bring him back again one more year and draft a quarterback, or do you move on completely from all the stink that you just had the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think you got to move on. I don't think that he's going to play again. I don't know why you'd want to. You're 40. You're going to be 42 then next year. You weren't even particularly good this year.
Yeah.
What team is going to want to? What team that is going to be able to protect you and give you enough weapons to be successful is going to want you? I don't see that. Best offensive line in the NFL's probably in Detroit. They don't need a quarterback. Another top offensive lines in Philadelphia. They don't need a quarterback.
No.
It's just not.
What about Atlanta? I know they got Michael Penix, obviously.
Yeah, they have Michael Penix. There's
right.
the answer.
Right.
Yeah, there's the answer.
I said it when I said it.
That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Chris Perfett.
I think real fast before you guys move on is I think what I want to ask Kerry, are you going to let the Jets fool you again? That's all I wanted to do.
No, me? No. I don't get fooled easily.
I'll tell you. Want to know where this topic started from? It was the Steelers conversation. But do you ever watch the Fool Penn and Teller show? Have you ever seen that?
That's a great one.
Yeah, on CW.
I haven't seen
KTLA.
Yeah, I think it's Fool Me. I think.
Yeah.
It's like
Fool
magicians
us.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Fool
Penn and
Us.
Teller Fool Us, because
haven't
there's a big FU for Fool Us.
Oh,
But it's and so you have all these magicians come on stage and they present their tricks, and Penn and Teller will not reveal how the trick was done, but they will say, "Did you fool them by doing the trick?"
I have seen. Yes, I have.
This is like Shark Tank for magicians.
I have seen it. Yeah.
It's one of those shows that honestly was on once, and I'm like, I don't know if this is from 2007 or if this is like a current show, and it's a current show, and it's actually pretty good. It is pretty entertaining. Do you have a team that fooled you this year, Chris Perfett?
I might have an entire state that fooled me, and that's Florida. So I never really bought into the Miami Dolphins, but I felt like this could probably be the year that, this is all right. I can kind of see it, and look, there's still an outside chance they might make the playoffs, but I'm going to take that chance away from them. But every year I feel like we do this with Tua, where he just goes out there and somehow gets hurt again, and the team goes on the road and has these abominable road games. So I'm kind of done with them. Jaguars are even worse than I thought they would be, and I think that's the big question for me right now is, have I finally been fooled for the last time by Trevor Lawrence, by this entire Jaguars organization, where every year I'm like, this looks like this should be able to step up in a weak AFC South, and then they just crater, and this one is even worse than ever. And I know Trevor Lawrence is shut down for the season and everything, but they were having this losing streak with Trevor Lawrence at the helm too. It's abysmal. And then the last piece of it might be the most painful, because I really did, up until this past Monday Night Football, or Sunday night, I believe it was, when they played the Cowboys, thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a very dangerous NFC playoff team, even with their injuries, even losing Chris Godwin, and I don't know how to process that Dallas Cowboys loss. I don't. I still think they might get into the playoffs over the Falcons, but good Lord, I think this is the limit of Todd Bowles coaching this team right now. It's absurd.
For someone who covers the Lions like you do, the Buccaneers beat them earlier this year and played them in a pretty good game in the divisional playoff last year.
And beat the Eagles. And beat the Eagles, too. They have wins over the top 2 NFC teams.
But I can understand why you would also say, man, these Buccaneers, I can't figure them out. I thought that they were legit, and then they go and lose to the Dallas Cowboys, who are playing for their head coach.
The Miami one is an interesting one, though, because I think you could be fooled by them again.
Everyone does. Yeah. Everyone gets fooled every year by the Dolphins.
But it's a specific point of Tua. Obviously, it's the health situation, because when he's in, they win. And so I could see why you would be fooled by that.
Can I tell you what I think the biggest – I'm going to tell you anyway. I don't need to ask your permission. This is what's so intriguing about the Dolphins moving forward, is because they have a heck of a running back in Devon Achane.
Yep.
An electric running back. And Tyreek Hill is not Tyreek Hill anymore, at least the way that they've used him, or they figured out a way to defend him. So now if you're Miami, who, again, does not beat teams that are better than they are, they can't do that for some reason. Do you now change your thinking? Is it now about Achane in the running game? Do we now transition that way, or is it still let's have Tua throw it around to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Jonnu Smith, the whole deal? I actually think they should probably, if Mike McDaniel is a Kyle Shanahan disciple, maybe you think a little bit more about relying on the running game than you do airing it out with those other guys.
And I think that's what gets lost in translation with that offense. Even when it was at its most explosive, they were centered around the running game. A lot of their stuff was stretch runs. They would get it to those guys, those fast running backs in space. Even the passing game was short. It'll be short, and then you take a shot with Tyreek Hill. But there was balance in that offense. Right now, it's not. And when you throw the ball the way they do with Tua, he's also going to make mistakes. And putting them in that situation is not good for them.
Well, if you can't take shots, nobody thinks that you're going to take a shot. Mm-hmm. So that's why you're throwing passes to Jonnu Smith 12 times a game.
Yeah, that's right. He's stepped up.